A snake doesn't want to be evil. It is created evil, cursed by its creator.
You know how hard it is to put a smile on your face when you know what a piece of shit you really are?
Jake Roberts captivated millions playing one of the most authentic wrestling characters of all time.
Some people claim to be things that they're not. Me, I've always claimed to be a snake.
Great psychologist. He just had the ability to capture your interest. A very rare find in our business.
I was just so upset with myself and the way that my life had went, so it was easy to get dark. How could anything that looks so hot be so cold? Well, it's easy. You see, time has done that to me.
Behind his natural charisma and unrivaled promo style lies an abyss of childhood trauma that shaped his character.
Thank you, Dad. Oh. You ever been addicted?
Spun right out of control.
Trust me. Trust me. I had a great mother, wonderful mother, loving mother. She was 13 when I was born.
Jake Roberts' family tree is disturbing. In 1954, his father Grizzly Smith was dating a woman and often spent the night at her place where she lived with her 12-year-old daughter. One night, the woman had a little too much to drink and passed out.
So he just went into another room and my mother. My father was a pedophile, which would haunt me the rest of my life.
In a small Texas town, Jake Roberts' mother was raped by a man twice her age. To avoid scandal from the pregnancy, she was forced to marry this man, which was legal under Texan law at the time. Grizzly and Paula Smith had 3 children together. When she got too old, Grizzly wasn't interested anymore. He divorced her when she turned 17. Unable to take care of the children by herself, Paula asked her mother to help her. Jake was raised by his grandmother. His sister was shipped off to other relatives. His brother put up for adoption. His mother remarried. Jake got along great with his stepfather. Then he died of electrocution. His grandmother also passed away. When Jake was 11, he moved in with his father, hoping to find stability. Grizzly had also remarried, this time a 14-year-old.
Shortly after I moved in with him, his wife started playing games. Sometimes games that weren't so funny. We'd have sex. And then afterwards, she beat me with a damn clothes hanger.
Jake tried to tell his dad, only to find out he was the one who had told Marsha to do it.
What makes me sick in my stomach, man, is that he did the same thing to my sisters.
The wild thing about it was, about a month before the first thing ever happened, he was walking around completely ignoring me. He couldn't stand to be in the same room. You know, as an 8-year-old kid, I mean, you think, well, what in the world have I done? One day, my mother was out on an errand at the store, and he happened to be home and told me to just come sit on his lap. And from there, that was the first time he put his hands on me. You come out of that real confused, real, I had no idea how to process that. I mean, you just don't. It strips you of your security. It strips you of your self-worth. You know, unfortunately, the result of that is addiction.
Dealing with his own trauma, Jake had started drinking at age 11. He knew exactly what was happening to his sisters, but his father had made sure that going to the police wasn't an option. Grizzly Smith was a wrestler, a local legend in Amarillo, Texas. Jake didn't want to ruin his reputation.
You know, they knew as a child growing up that my father was Superman to me.
And they wouldn't do anything to tarnish him because they care for me so much.
Even when there's no love to be seen in an abusive parent's relationship to their child, the child learns a concept of familial love, be it distant and disaffected. Jake loved his father, and he hated himself for it.
I built a wall, and I learned to lie.
This psychological torture was later visible in his promos.
Anything that I do is your fault. If this devil gets a hold of you, brother, you don't come back.
Grizzly Smith's grip on Jake's psyche affected not only his character work as a wrestler, it robbed him of his freedom and of his life.
I grew up hating women. I grew up hating men. I grew up hating people.
Jake the Snake Roberts grew up hating wrestling. He wanted to be an architect. When he graduated from high school, he drove 6 hours to see his dad and talk to him about his future.
I informed him that I'd graduated from high school with honors, and I wanted to go on to college and become an architect. That was my dream. Nothing. I got nothing. I wanted to hear my father say, "I'm proud of you, son." You know, he never told me that. He'd tell other wrestlers he was proud of me, but he wouldn't tell me. Never.
There's nothing in the world a son won't do to earn his father's pride.
That's when my young brain, with the help of some alcohol, come up with the idea of if you want your father to be proud, you've got to get in that ring and beat up a wrestler.
Jake's first match turned into a fist fight.
Got tore up, basically crawled back to the locker room and looks down at me and he goes, "I am ashamed of you. You're gutless. You'll never amount to a damn thing."
Jake made a deal with the devil. His dreams were eaten up by a burning rage to beat his father at what he did best.
That was my whole drive. I got into wrestling because I hated my father. I want to make him eat those words. And that's the night that I gave up on being an architect.
I'm gonna show you what the devil's all about, my man. Me and Satan walked side by side for a long time, shared the same thoughts.
Jake the Snake Roberts was never trained to be a wrestler. He figured it out as he went along.
You reach a point in wrestling that you get it.
The DDT is his invention, one of the greatest finishing moves of all time.
It's not easy to think up a new move in wrestling.
You see, some people are imitators and other people are innovators, and I am an innovator.
Jake was never a great athlete, but his ring psychology was perfect. Early in his career, his voice box got crushed by an inexperienced wrestler. He couldn't talk for 3 weeks, and even then it was painful, which made his promos even more believable.
I'm not your average local yokel from Kmart. No, I'm a little bit different.
Jake the Snake wanted to be a psychological menace. He had learned to dissociate and adapt through deception and emotional masking, skills that translated beautifully into his promo work.
I learned that as a kid, how to manipulate emotions by your facial expressions. You want to play something real, then you get real close and listen.
The little things that made his promos so believable were a survival tactic, honed from years of reading people and learning to say the right thing in the right way to avoid punishment. Starting in 1983, while wrestling for Georgia Championship Wrestling, he called himself Jake the Snake Roberts, because everyone is afraid of snakes. Parents tell their kids to stay away from snakes. He wanted to be a monster. Jake actually suggested carrying a snake to the ring as an externalization of the character he played, but Mid-South booker Bill Watts said it was too Carney-like. 1 year later, in 1986, Vince McMahon said that's exactly what he wants Jake to do, and he offered him a very lucrative contract.
Me being
severely scared of snakes went out the window when I seen the zeros on that piece of paper.
When Jake first unfoiled this python into the ring, you could hear people gasp all over the arena.
Why do I put the snake across somebody's body and let him crawl? I get off on it, don't you?
He was a storyteller. I think that's so valuable to being a good performer, is being a good storyteller.
I'm not the kind of guy you walk out in front of if I'm driving a car, because I'll be the first one to tap you.
Jake always told stories, and I think he was one of the greatest at it.
Another thing that made Jake stand out is that he didn't yell every word into the microphone. He carefully chose rhythm and intonation.
If a man has enough power, he can speak softly and everyone will listen. Even a fool knows that a man only has 5 senses. A snake, he has 6.
Jake had a range unlike anybody else and a delivery unlike anybody else. It made him extremely unique.
You see, I've got something you can't handle. It's DDT. So what are you gonna do, snowman? Melt.
In February 1987, Jake was hit in the head by the Honky Tonk Man with a dreadnought guitar. They had made incisions in the back, but they forgot to remove the wooden braces inside the body of the guitar. Jake was knocked out. 2 vertebrae were shattered. Pieces of fiberglass remained lodged in his back for weeks. He got surgery as soon as possible, but started relying on painkillers, not because the physical pain was too much to handle, but because the drugs numbed his psyche as well.
The stiffness and the numbness and the weakness are nothing compared to the hatred that sits behind these cold eyes, my man.
In November 1987, Jake's sister Robin made her debut in the WWF. When they met backstage one day, both were surprised. That's how distant their relationship was.
I don't even know if he knew that I was even training.
Robin later won the Women's Championship by defeating sensational Sherry. Jake Roberts, on the other hand, didn't win a single title in his entire WWF career, which is not to say he wasn't successful.
From Atlanta to Denver to Phoenix to LA to Wyoming, Indiana.
Jake was one of those guys that the promoters talked about that could talk people into the arenas.
You don't play around with people like me. Because people like me, we just don't play.
Jake's promos sold tickets. His villainous persona was the perfect foil for the popular babyfaces. One of the greatest heels in history, his name was known all over the world. He had done what he set out to do. His success as a wrestler overshadowed that of his father by a large margin. But that didn't make him whole. Grizzly Smith's shadow still loomed large over his life.
At the point where he did become more famous and more successful than our father, he's like a tornado. He just spun right out of control.
If you keep playing with snakes, you got to expect one thing. You're gonna get bit.
Jake got bitten lots of times. Pythons don't inject venom into their prey, but they have over 100 sharp teeth in their mouth, which makes their bite more painful than that of a viper or a cobra.
I know I love all animals, but Jesus Christ.
He hated that snake. Jake would just dump it on the floor in the shower.
Jake wasn't the only one who mistreated the python backstage. Some wrestlers put lit cigarettes into the bag with it, just to make it angry. Jake's dislike of the snake stemmed primarily from the extra burden it posed while traveling. It weighed over 60 pounds, and Jake had to take it with him into the car and into the motel. Sometimes it ripped furniture off the wall overnight, sometimes it disappeared without a trace.
I spent a lot of time with Jake, and he would stay up all night and party and do whatever. You could see it getting out of control.
In the late 80s, Jake started doing cocaine. It made him feel confident, almost invincible, while deep down, he felt worthless and miserable. He was lying to himself. He hated it, but he couldn't stop. Day after day, before the show began, Jake would scope out the roughest part of town and score cocaine. It was his #1 priority. Then he went to the arena for the show, wrestled his match, and got high. He took at least one woman up to his room, partied, and eventually passed out. The next day, a new town, a new plug, and a new woman. Jake Roberts was a transient not only in his career, but in his relationships. He said he didn't medicate to numb the pain from the ring, but the pain he's shared with his family. In 1975, the same year he started wrestling, Jake got married and had a daughter. He never stopped to ask himself whether he was ready to have children. He did what people do and hoped it would turn out okay. But Jake was never taught the value of close relationships or how to maintain them. He wasn't ready to be looked up to as a father because he didn't like the person he saw in the mirror. So he ran.
You see, I've always been a drifter. I've always walked alone. It's the only road I know. I gotta take care of me.
I saw my dad more on television than I did in person. Can you imagine what that's like? Do you know how mortifying that is?
When his daughter graduated from high school, Jake talked to her mother. He lied and claimed he was sober so he could spend time with her and drive her to Georgia for college.
He was sober. And so he smoked crack the entire drive from Texas to Georgia. It was painful to be with him.
After a while, you get so friggin' good at letting people down that it just doesn't feel natural doing anything else.
Jake has admitted that he wasn't just absent. The rare times he did see his family, he lied to them, played off his neglect as a big joke. He was insecure and emotionally distant. He didn't know how to be a parent, paralyzed by the fear that he would fail like his father before him.
Growing up, I always swore that I would never, ever treat my children the way my father treated me. I swore that up and down 1,000,000 times. And what did I do?
My father. There was a man that really knew how to mold a person. He would give you a whipping for lying to him. He'd give you a whipping whenever he thought you needed it.
Abuse and neglect run in the Smith family. Jake figured the best he could do was to stay away from his family, so he wouldn't hurt them. There was too much anger in him, too much self-hate.
My sister Jolynn she spent too much time with my dad, you know what I mean?
As Jolynn grew up, she looked for love in all the wrong places. 3 times she got pregnant. Each time, Jake beat her.
I beat her. I beat her up because she got pregnant again. She's hurt my mother.
One day he told Jolynn to get out of the house and never come back. And she never came back. At age 19, Jolynn married a 50-year-old man, moved to a trailer park, and had a baby. When the baby was 6 months old, she was abducted and presumably murdered by her husband's ex-wife. Jake talked about it in a theatrical appearance at a megachurch in Arizona. The audience didn't know that every word he said was true. The guilty party was found, and even Grizzly Smith attended the trial, but not Jake.
I didn't go to the trial. I was medicating myself, trying to pass out every day.
That was the whole trick, man. These people do not understand. I thought you might have caught on. The snake in the bag was not the snake at all. This is the snake, and you know that. Trust me.
I'm a junkie. I'm a liar. I'm a thief. You know how much self-hate is involved in admitting that? How I had to look at myself in the mirror? I took all the mirrors down. The ones that didn't, I broke.
Jolyn's disappearance drove the siblings even further apart. They reunited around 1990 and tried to mend their relationship. It was like building a house without a foundation. Jake Roberts' career in WWF ended after WrestleMania 8 because of several broken promises by Vince McMahon. A short stint in WCW ended when former Mid-South booker Bill Watts got him fired because of old heat. Jake then went to work for AAA in Mexico and wrestled in front of over 40,000 people. After this, however, the arenas got smaller and smaller as his addiction got worse and worse.
I'm ashamed to tell you the depth of how low I got.
You ever been addicted? You know what it's like to sit in a hotel room and wish you were dying because it hurts so bad. Take a handful of pills, you don't want to wake up. Then when you wake up, you're mad because you didn't die.
Eventually, he gave up on wrestling and started hanging out at a Christian motorcycle club that helped keep him sober. He reunited with his family and toured the country, speaking about his newfound faith.
Think about it though, and I've thought about it a lot. The devil has no holidays. He's always waiting for every moment, for that one slip up, then he takes your soul away.
Just like every rehab attempt, this one didn't last. In 1996, he was hired back. Vince McMahon even put him on the booking team at Roberts' request. But the return to the locker room did not do his sobriety any favors.
All of these things that were Jake's demon, people are just, presenting it to him.
There was one time that I poured whiskey down his throat, and it was real whiskey.
I couldn't be around wrestlers that were partying. I wasn't strong enough.
In 1998, filmmaker Barry Blaustein captured some of Jake's low points, accompanying him for the production of the documentary Beyond the Mat. Jake met with his daughter Brandy, who had just completed her degree. Jake was suicidal. All he had in his heart was shame and pain. Brandy managed to talk him out of another suicide attempt, saying it would be selfish and unfair toward her. So Jake went on killing himself slowly, with drugs and alcohol. What followed were 10 years of rock bottom, weird comments and embarrassing appearances. He never sought therapy, he just numbed the pain. Jake can't remember the number of rehab clinics he's been to, just that he relapsed one more time. He ran so long from the demon of his past that he became that demon for his own children.
I was grateful when he stayed away. I've never said that out loud.
The most important thing in my life for 20 years was cocaine. That is really messed up. I'd cut off both legs, man, if I could have a relationship with some of my kids. And I hate myself more than they could ever hate me for that failure.
I think Jake was as bad an addict as you can be. I just wanted to try to help him and try to get him back on track. And I could do it because I've helped so many other people. I thought, okay, let me try to pop him into this and see if it's possible.
When Jake Roberts first met Diamond Dallas Page, it was in a nightclub and they did shots together. Jake helped DDP break into the wrestling business when everyone else had given up on him. 20 years later, DDP wanted to return the favor.
Jake's my brother, he's my mentor, he's probably one of the 3 closest people in the world to me.
DDP Yoga helped Mick Foley, Chris Jericho, Steve Austin, and countless other wrestlers in the past, but getting Jake Roberts' life back on track entailed a lot more commitment. In 2012, Dallas visited Jake at home in Gainesville, Texas. At the time, Jake weighed 300 pounds and could barely move.
Because I couldn't get around anymore, I couldn't get up, I couldn't get down.
Even after all this time, Jake still had hope that he could get sober. But rehab didn't work for him. Dallas knew that what Jake needed was someone to keep him accountable, so he convinced him to move to Georgia and live with his family for a while.
You know, you go to rehabs, man, they feed you dog crap. Yeah, I'm sorry. Being in Dallas he gives you the best of foods.
The movie The Resurrection of Jake the Snake chronicles Jake's road to recovery.
I think DDP Yoga is probably what saved my life.
After a 2-year process, Jake was ready to celebrate his return into the spotlight with his WWE Hall of Fame induction in 2014. He had just been diagnosed with cancer. Confident in his recovery, he said, "If the devil can't defeat me, cancer doesn't stand a chance in hell." 5 months later, Jake announced he was cancer-free.
Sometimes when you have problems, you learn a lot. I certainly learned that alcohol and drugs aren't good for you, and that it can hurt your career, and it can hurt your family. The last one I care about. I've got 8 children. I've got 4 that still don't want much to do with me.
I'd do anything for my kids. And I can't imagine as a father not doing that for your own kids, knowing the hurt you caused them.
Jake was not alone in chasing affection from his abusive father. When Grizzly Smith started showing symptoms of Alzheimer's, Jake's brother Richard became his sole caretaker, until he passed away in 2010.
He never apologized for giving me up for adoption, and I never asked for it. I have no complaints. I mean, how can I complain?
I thought that with him passing, I wouldn't have to think of some things anymore. Memories don't go away that easy.
Jake and his siblings later spoke about their trauma in an episode of Dark Side of the Ring. It brought them a little closer together, but it's still hard to reconnect.
I don't blame anybody at all for the lack of being together. That was all done early on by Dad.
I think there's a certain amount of hope. Robin and I could be friends. I respect her and I love her very much. And it'd be nice to have a sister.
I hope he's made it to that place where he is okay with himself. You can't apologize anymore. It's not necessary. Put the mirrors back up.
I'm not ashamed anymore. Still a little angry at times, but not so angry that I have to medicate it. And what I learned in life is this: you don't get to choose the way somebody loves you. They love you in their own way, right or wrong.
He never wanted to do the things he did. And that's what's so hard.
Jake the Snake Roberts' real name is Aurelian Smith Jr., his father's name.
Now you know why I went with Jake the Snake. Jake was a mean son of a bitch that didn't care about nothing. Aurelian, I put him away a long time ago. But I am more comfortable with Jake now. I respect Jake. I know how dangerous Jake can be.
He knows that he wasted a lot of his talent and that he sabotaged his own career. The long-term damage of repeated concussions and substance abuse make it hard for him to remember things. Sometimes he has difficulty speaking, but he is happy.
The last 10 years have been wonderful. I'm that guy now. I'm that guy that got friggin' sober, man. I'm that guy that's doing the right thing. Now I've got 10 years under my belt, man. I can't believe that.
Jake enjoys fishing, gardening, smoking meat, and classic cars. He swears by his yoga routine and advocates for sobriety online.
Christian or not, man, you gotta fight the devil every damn day.
He still hangs on to his faith and calls God his best friend. Because after everything Jake has put his family through, his ex-wife and some of his children are willing to give him a second chance. He goes fishing with his sons from time to time. The relationship they're building is a house without a foundation. We don't know if any of them will ever feel at home there, but at least they can stop running now.
Jake Roberts today is exactly who he wants to be. And that's a good person, who cares, loves his family, and wants to help other people. That's powerful.
In 2020, he joined AEW, where he is still under contract today. He extends his hand to everyone, and a few have reached out and accepted his help. To some, Jake is an inspiration, not because he's a saint, but because he's a sinner. Jake the Snake got bitten plenty of times. The teeth marks on his arms are a reminder to everyone that while you can't undo the cuts of the world, you can learn to live with the scars.
My history will not be my destiny. My past will not look like my future at all.